Hello, sports fans. This is Joe DuPont from the Red Rose Diner in Towanda, Bradford County. And I want to talk to you about the Brinks Robbery, which took place in 1950 in Boston, involving 11 people. And it was at the time the largest heist ever successfully perpetrated, involving 11 men. And two of those men ended up in Towanda. They went up to see the brother's grave, the brother's grave of one of the men, Stanley Gascoria, I guess, out in St. Louis, and then they went to Chicago. It's kind of shaky how they got to Chicago, but they did pass through Towanda on the way up. And on the way back, they stopped at Kane, Pennsylvania, and they stole a bunch of guns from a gun shop there. Now, what's interesting is on the way back, they must have passed by, I think it's called Defiance. It's a town where the other gentleman, Joseph O'Keefe, was spent some time with his wife. It's about 5 miles south of Route 6, so there's no doubt in my mind that they may have stopped there. I think the in-laws lived there too, on the way up and the way down. So they came back down Route 220 at the time, coming back on Route 6 to Route 6. So they came into town, they stopped at the David Wilmot Hotel, spent the night there, had breakfast downstairs, and sometime after 11 o'clock, they got in their car, or let's put it this way, just before 11 o'clock, they got in their 1949 black Buick sedan. It was 1950. And they got disorientated, and they went east on Route 6, asked the police officer, who happened to be the chief of police, Dean Meredith, how to get back up to, I guess, Boston. And he said, turn around, come back and turn around and do a U-turn further down, and then come back up here and I'll tell you. So as he was telling me, he looked in the back seat. He saw this brand new luggage with tags on it. They saw they were wearing hats, which they had stolen. The luggage and the hats they had stolen from Coudersport, Pennsylvania, which is a little further closer to here than Kane. Kane was the first place they stopped and they bought the guns. Now, the reason why they bought the guns, or stole the guns, is because the guns they used in the Brinks robbery, they took all the guns from everybody and they threw them in a pond, which they were later recovered, but they wanted to get rid of, they didn't want to have any trace of that robbery. No one was shot. These guys basically didn't shoot people. Joseph O'Keefe never killed anybody. Never shot anybody, as far as I know, except when he was being attacked after this whole episode. So they turn around, they get the directions from our chief of police, Dean Meredith, and at that time he saw the luggage and he figured something was up. They had tags still on the hats, they had tags still on the luggage, and he figured the money was in those bags. So he called the Pennsylvania Motor Patrol up in Athens, set up a roadblock, and the two of these guys, Stanley Gascoria and Joseph O'Keefe, were stopped at the Ulster Narrows. Now, it's very interesting. There was no marker there to tell where they were stopped. And that was the beginning of the end. Now, Joseph O'Keefe said, what the hell are you doing? He said, we want to look in your car. He said, well, you can't. You need a search warrant. What's the probable cause? Well, apparently, that night, a lawnmower engine, either electric or something, was stolen from Main Street. And he used that for the reason to look in the car. And he said, what are you guys talking about? I don't have a lawnmower. I don't even have a need for a lawnmower. I don't even have a lawn. So they opened the door. They, of course, when they came over into the Narrows, there was at least, I think it was 3 state troopers, and they had their rifles out. They were ready for action. It was probably the most historic stop in Pennsylvania by the state troopers, but you'll never hear of it. There's no records. By the way, the FBI destroyed the records in 1999 and 2010. You can't, through Freedom of Information, you can't find out anything, what actually happened. Our Historical Society had 66 years to find out what happened, and they did nothing. So let me go on. So they set up the roadblock. They got the guys. They opened up the suitcase, I guess, and they found guns. And, of course, these guys were ex-felons, so they're not supposed to have guns. They stole them, so they're up for some serious time. The car they caught him in was a 1959 black Buick sedan, and it belonged to Gascora just prior. I mean, it's a brand new car in 1959, so he bought it. And this, I guess, was, prior to the robbery. So he had some money prior. They bought the car. He surrendered it, turned it over to Joseph O'Keefe. And he also, in the same process, as Stanley guy, surrendered his driver's license. Now, that sounds strange, but it turns out that he had some sort of brain tumor. And he was having convulsions. And he was having convulsions, and that's the reason why he turned over the car. Now, these convulsions probably could have taken place during this robbery, which would have been very embarrassing, but they didn't. But he ended up, both of them, for a while, ended up in our local Bradford County jail up here, which is now the Historical Society. And the girl who used to work there, or was a child there, her father was the sheriff, she said that he had these seizures all the time. Now, the other guy, Joseph O'Keefe, he spent 3.5 years in that jail, which is a record, a model prisoner. I have one witness say that he was actually on, what do they call those things, a trustee or something. He was able to leave, but I don't see that written anywhere. In any event, O'Keefe stayed there, and they sent Stanley out to some prison out in Pittsburgh. They beat the crap out of him. And ultimately, he died in prison in 1956 from basically complications or whatever related to his tumor. Two guys came up here all the time, some mob guys. I don't know their names right now. It's not really that important. But both of them, one of them disappeared from the face of the earth. The other one got shot to death in his car. They brought up money for trying to get him bailed out. They paid for special food for O'Keefe. That was from the Wilmot. But what's interesting here is that one of the girls, a lady I had communicated with, she told me that her uncle, who was a dentist here, was actually forced to extract 2 teeth from probably O'Keefe. And we don't know if that was done on the way up or the way back. But if it was done on the way back, that could be very historical, because why would a guy who was basically involved in a major robbery want to expose himself to the police and go right up to a police chief and ask him for directions with a car with the license plates from Massachusetts? It was really a strange thing. In fact, the passenger, Stanley, looked so suspicious and nervous at the time. So obviously he saw the danger in doing that the chief of police, Dean Meredith, it really brought a lot of suspicion to them. So it's my theory, and it's a long shot, but if they did have those teeth yanked prior, because they left at around 11 o'clock from the town up to the Narrows, it could have affected the anesthesia at that time, could have affected his judgment, and he didn't see the police chief as a threat. And the fact that they got disorientated because they came down York Avenue, which a simple thing was to go back uphill York Avenue. So they knew they didn't go over any bridges or anything like that. So there's no way they should have been confused as to where they were going if they had all their faculties, or at least if Joseph O'Keefe had his faculties. So my theory is that the reason why they made that mistake was because of this doctor, I think Burkell, I think. Definitely extracted some teeth, and we don't know if it was before or after or whatever. So, getting back to this thing again. once they had the guys, they took this 59 Buick and they took it across the street to what is now Ferrario's. It was Benson Oldsmobile, and two guys were forced to take the car apart. The guy, one of the guys who took the car apart passed away last year. I didn't get a chance to talk to him. I talked to his daughter. His role in the Brinks robbery was, as far as taking the car apart, was in an obituary. So at this point, we don't even know what the license plate number of that black Buick was. We don't know the model number. So we can't actually buy one of these things and use it in our parades because no one gave a damn about this. No one gave a damn about finding out the license plate number, which we could have been replicating and selling all these years for money for our historical society. So they took the car across the river and took it to Benson's Oldsmobile, and that car disappeared off the face of the earth. And what's interesting is that I don't see any recollection of O'Keefe in any of his books and stuff that he wrote. He never mentioned the fact that he was mentally disabled to contact the police officer and get himself arrested, or the fact that they took his car away. He never got his car back. But it was a real windfall for this area because they sent all kinds of donations from the mob for lawyers to defend them. They got some high-profile lawyers that defend them. One of the lawyers here, Duval, was in his office, and the guy came in and he said, "Can you guys get these guys out on bail?" So he checked and he came back and said, "No, we can't get them out on bail. They're there." So the guy gave him a $100 bill, threw it on his desk, and left. No record, no nothing, but it definitely happened. So it would be nice if the towns of Kane and Coudersport and Towanda, and they called, I guess, East Towanda, which is really Wysox, got together and put up some historical signs at the intersection where he was made of Main and Bridge Street, up at the Narrows. Even the police station, they didn't call them the state police at that time. They called it Pennsylvania Motor Patrol at the location where that headquarters was. They had to make some phenomenal time to get to those guys at the Narrows where they actually stopped them. There's no sign or plaque in memory of Meredith, who basically started the whole chain of events, which put an end to the Brinks robbery. Like I said, they spent over $20 million solving this case. They destroyed all the information that they have. The movies that they came out with Peter Falk totally made a mockery of Dean Meredith, having him sit on his ass while he's smoking his cigarette while these guys supposedly come into town and rob some stuff. I guess they were trying to replicate the theft in Coudersport, which they didn't steal anything from here. But they had been to Towanda before on the way up. That's we know. It's really a crying shame. Most towns would kill for such a story. It was worldwide news. It was in the papers every day. Unfortunately for the story, the Korean War was exploding, and that quickly became part of the papers. But we've never done anything that Wild Buffalo Bill was here at the turn of the century. We had John Philip Sousa here. We had Mr. Sandman, was written by Pat Ballard right up on York Avenue, 15 York Avenue, the same road that the Brinks robbers going up and down. That was Mr. Sandman, and Stephen Foster, who later wrote Camptown Races, Camptowns around here. He went to school up here, so he spent some time here. We're finally getting the music department in the high school to actually do some, get their choir to learn about Mr. Sandman, the song, and have them play it. So my mission here is to get some sort of historical thing going here. We also had in 1963, we had 7 elephants went crazy after they crossed the river and went under a railroad trestle, and then they got spooked by a train. And that was, I guess, in July, June or July. We give out peanuts during that time. But that could be the basis for a neat fun run. In fact, the Camptown races, I would love to see them do 2 laps around the Towanda. Actually, it's called the Bradford County Airport. That's about 5 miles going around it twice to mimic the Camptown races and maybe make that something. But it's very sad that nothing seems to go on here that they could bring tourism in and get together with Kane and Countersport and put up these signs, these historic signs where these things happen. The other thing, if I can think about it, we had the Great Elephant Stampede. I'm trying to think if there was another one I wanted to bring in here. So anyhow, all the perpetrators of the Brinks robbery died. I think 1967. I think is when O'Keefe died. I think he was. I think he was 1972 maybe. Oh, the thing about O'Keefe, they gave him a new name, Joseph O'Keefe, after he turned state's evidence. They gave him $5,000 when he got out of jail early. And they gave him a name of Paul Williams. And he became a chauffeur for none other than Cary Grant, the actor. He became a butler and chauffeur for him, but he got nervous doing that because Cary Grant was always doing movies in a way, and if the place ever got robbed, he figured he'd be the first person to be blamed. So he kind of extricated himself from that situation. He knew Helen Reddy, the singer, too. So, like I said, most towns would give their eye teeth. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. I don't know if anybody saw fried green tomatoes. In that, Kathy Bates said the word Towanda, Towanda. Now there are 5 Towandas. We have Towanda Township down here. I'm in the Towanda borough, and there's northern Towanda. And then there's a Towanda, Illinois. And then there's a Towanda, Kansas. And that's all the Towandas in the United States. And I've been trying to get the various Towandas to send basically kind of Christmas cards to each other. Maybe get the mayors of all the Towandas together, have them visit the Towandas out in Kansas and Illinois, and make a thing about Towanda. And then hopefully they'll send a letter to Kathy Bates before she dies, thanking her for belching out the word Towanda, because we really don't have, unfortunately, too many things. We have a beautiful area here, a lot of scenic stuff along the roads. We got the Susquehanna River here, but we don't really take advantage of anything, and I really wish I knew the answer. Anyhow, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye.